Yeah, you staged it! You staged it! Don't you try! You staged it!
Now you, the British people, are being gaslit. You are being lied to. While the people always sensed there was something unusual about the Southport atrocities ever since that fateful day, the authorities have hid behind legal processes and bureaucracies. Yesterday, Keir Starmer admitted that he knew the details about Axel Ruda-Cabana's background long before they came out.
More children are affected every minute. The question is, are we going to do something? Is it time to change the story? How many more children are going to be victims? Is it mine next? These are the questions in the minds of nearly every parent in the UK after what happened to the little girls in Southport. Starmer was once the pride of Labour, but those glory days seem like a distant memory. It's like watching a top player completely lose their touch. He arrived in Southport expecting a warm reception. He is the Labour leader after all. But instead, Starmer got a reality check he didn't see coming. The senseless murder of 3 young girls in Southport is a devastating moment in our history. And no words come anywhere close to expressing the brutality of this horror. Before we dive deeper into what happened at Southport when Starmer visited, we want to urge you to like the video and stick to the end of the video to get the full details.
Usual practice in a case such as this. But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details.
But this is not consistent with Keir Starmer's previous actions. During the 2017 Finsbury Park terror attack, Starmer called it a terror attack before terrorism charges had been announced.
Keir Starmer is a man under intense pressure, but things have become even more difficult in recent weeks. When he arrived in Southport, there was only one thing in the minds of every parent in the crowd. It could have been my child. With that mindset, it wasn't difficult to see why things quickly went sideways for Starmer there. But what did Starmer say that quickly irritated the crowd to boo him? He simply misread the room. The moment Starmer started speaking, the atmosphere changed. It was like the energy had been drained from the room. People fidgeted in their seats, exchanging glances that screamed, "Is this really happening?" The reaction was impossible to ignore. Disbelief, disappointment, and a growing sense of frustration could be seen on the faces of the crowd. Within a short while, murmurs began to ring from various parts of the gathering. Some began asking, "What do you make of it?" The Prime Minister is continuing to deliberately mislead the British people to continue suiting his own narrative. Interestingly, there have been plenty of Labour events in Southport in the past. Back when Jeremy Corbyn was in charge, the crowd was hanging on his every word. But with Starmer, it felt like watching a comedian bomb on stage. Every line was followed by an awkward silence instead of applause, and the Labour MPs looked like they wanted to disappear. One was practically hiding behind his notepad, while another was glued to her phone like it was a lifeline. They didn't need to say it, you could see it all over their faces. This was a disaster. You're probably wondering what Starmer says that went so wrong. He dove into his economic policies, convinced he was delivering a masterclass. But to the crowd, it was like he was speaking a foreign language. The disconnect was glaring, their faces filled with confusion rather than conviction. And then it happened. The first big boo. It was like a dam bursting. Starmer was in the middle of explaining how his economic plan would save the country when a voice from the back let out a loud, unmistakable boo. It was as if he had spoken for the whole room, because from that moment the floodgates opened. As the noise completely overwhelmed the Prime Minister and Labour MPs, he had to cut his speech and leave. However, he met a hostile crowd outside the venue. Then, people from the crowd began to speak almost simultaneously. One middle-aged woman said, "I've been a Labour voter my entire life. You have failed to be the opposition. You understand people have died because you have failed to do your job and ask the real questions. Well, I am telling you now, and I hope this goes out, you have failed this country." Another individual, clearly a parent, said, "I'll just start with this. How was the murder of those little girls and the attempted murder of everyone else not a terrorist offence? How can it be that the Crown Prosecution Services and police know he's got a manual called Military Studies in the Jihad Against Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda training manual resting in his bedroom, and not put two and two together and say that he's committed a terrorist attack? Why wait for months before confirming that you had prior knowledge of his identity? These questions further agitated the crowd, and they continued to boo Starmer until he left the environment.
Flaunting, it seems, lockdown rules whilst the rest of the country was suffering. We have a Prime Minister today who's that exciting. He actually hired a voice coach, right, on Christmas Eve, which is a story in itself, for God's sake, you boring idiot, not you, him, who had a mask on, so quite how you're going to treat... that doesn't work, does it? I mean, mate, he's a hypocrite, isn't he?
Well, part of the reason some people thought Keir Starmer would be a good Prime Minister, some idiots did think that, was that they thought he was so boring, he was the type of person that would...
But Starmer's problems go beyond the Southport attack. It is a part of a larger problem. Starmer's biggest problem now comes from members of his own party.
Something that has afflicted the Tories now for a long time is to really insult the British electorate's intelligence. People watching that interview must have been amazed to hear, for example, that the Tories should now be trusted on immigration because they have experience in immigration. That's like an arsonist turning up at your house, which is ablaze, demanding the opportunity to put it out on the basis that they had the experience of
a year or more, many of them on around about 300,000, 400,000, vast sums being earned by 3,500 people. I want a health secretary to come in and say, I'm going to get rid of a load of these people because you don't need them. I'm going to get rid of these diverse.
Frustrated Labour MPs have turned against him for what they perceive as deviation from the fundamental principles of the party. These MPs are fed up with Starmer, and they're not keeping quiet about it. They're calling out Starmer, and it's not pretty. Details on a tense meeting that's shaking the party to its core have emerged. But that's not all. The fallout of this internal chaos, combined with Trump's upcoming UK visit, is sending Labour poll numbers plummeting to an all-time low.
UK, Ben Habib. Good morning to you, Ben.
Morning, Matthew.
Well, this must be a very jolly day for you. A very jolly day indeed.
Well, it's a remarkable insurgency that Reform UK has managed. You know, when I joined the party in March 2023, the party was polling at 6%. And when Rishi Sunak called the election on the 22nd of May, we were polling at 16%. So we went up, you know, almost threefold in our polling in a year.
If you thought your family reunions over Christmas were dramatic, think again. This meeting was a full-blown showdown. The room was filled with fired-up Labour MPs already ready to confront Starmer. The tension was thick, and you could feel the room waiting for someone to spark the explosion, and boy did it go off. One MP called Starmer a spineless jellyfish to his face. Another accused him of betraying the working class. These weren't just small complaints, there were attacks on the heart of Labour's mission. The shouting grew so loud that people outside thought they were at a football match.
And you know, you're just spoilers, you're going to split the right-wing vote, you're going to take the Tories out, but you won't get a single seat. And of course, Reform UK got 5 seats in that election. We got 14% of the vote. And
do you think, out of interest, though, that you did split the right vote and that you have helped Labour to maybe a bigger majority than they would have anticipated?
Well, I mean, there were 2 things, I think, that happened at the last election. The first is there was a voter despondency. Voter turnout from 2019 went down from 67.
It was absolute chaos. Starmer tried to defend himself, but it was clear he was out of his depth and caught off guard by the barrage of criticisms. Some MPs couldn't even stay in the room and walked out in disgust. By the end of it, Starmer looked shell-shocked as if he'd just survived a political assault. But the real shocker came when 15 MPs called for his resignation then and there. This wasn't just a handful of disgruntled voices, it was a full-blown rebellion. The criticisms weren't just about policies, they questioned Starmer's ability to lead, his commitment to Labour values and his effectiveness as an opposition leader. MPs accused him of failing to hold the government to account and lacking a clear vision for the party. Imagine facing that level of hostility every day at work, knowing a large chunk of your team wants you gone. That's the reality Starmer is living right now. Now, let's talk about Labour's plummeting poll numbers. They've dropped 10 points in just 2 weeks. a fall so dramatic it hasn't been seen since the Iraq War days. Even Labour's strongholds like Manchester and Liverpool are showing signs of faltering support. Starmer's personal approval rating is so low, it's practically non-existent. Meanwhile, the Tories are celebrating Labour's misfortune. Some are even calling this the worst performance for Labour in 20 years. Young voters, once Starmer's biggest supporters, are jumping ship faster than you can say turn. These were the people meant to be the future of Labour, but now they're more disillusioned than a kid learning math, and all of this is unfolding just as Trump plans his grand UK tour. Talk about terrible timing. It's like Labour decided to implode just as the world's media turns its cameras on the UK. Where does this leave Labour? Their polling figures have now plummeted to a mere 28%, marking the lowest point since Keir Starmer assumed leadership of the Labour Party. This decline resembles a political limbo contest, raising the pressing question of just how much further they can sink. In light of these dismal numbers, Starmer may want to consider updating his CV, as a position within the European Union could become a viable option for him if his leadership continues to falter. Moreover, Starmer has made significant shifts in his stance on 8 out of 10 major pledges he made during his leadership campaign. This frequent alteration of positions has led to growing perceptions of indecisiveness and unreliability within the Labour Party, undermining the trust of both party members and the electorate. The situation has become even more precarious, with 5 members of the shadow cabinet resigning in just 1 week, signalling escalating tensions within the party. Starmer's inner circle is rapidly diminishing, and the spectre of a potential rebellion looms large, leaving him with an ever-decreasing number of allies to rely on. Additionally, his media image has taken a dramatic hit, with negative coverage increasing by a staggering 200%. Even media outlets that have traditionally aligned with the left are now voicing criticism of his leadership and decisions. This shift in media sentiment further compounds his challenges, as public perception plays a crucial role in political viability. Overall, it is evident that Starmer's circumstances are becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. The combination of plummeting polling figures, internal dissent, and a tarnished media image paints a troubling picture for the future of his leadership and the Labour Party as a whole. As the pressure mounts, the question remains, can Starmer turn things around, or is he facing an inevitable decline? What do you think of Labour MP's decision to cut ties with Starmer? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.